Hi, I'm Tim Biber, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about a couple little ways that you might be able to improve your speed. Um, One of the main things that comes up is metronomes. Are they good or bad? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about string gauge, the economy of movement with your hands, and the type of pick you use. There's a lot of little things like that that can help. So, you got to experiment with, combinations of each and see what works for you. Okay, the first thing we'll talk about is the metronome. Is it good or bad to use? I don't really believe there's a correct answer. I really think it depends on the person, the style, the technique, what they're trying to achieve. I've heard people say that it makes your playing so robotic. That can be good for some parts. I've had some parts that I wish my playing was a little more robotic because it sounds really cool. But some people just don't quite get, what you do with it. First of all, a metronome keeps a steady tempo for you to practice at. So you can learn, if you're in a band situation or something, you're able to stay together. So you're not all over the place and everybody's getting their spots at different times. And another thing that it really helps is, especially when you're starting out, is learning note groupings. So that a whole note is, one beat. And one beat is one click on the metronome. So every time it clicks, you're hitting a note. Or, 16th notes, that's 4 for every click. So in between clicks, there needs to be 4 notes there. Just so you can learn, kind of the patterns. If you don't have a metronome, that's an easy fix. You can get free apps on your phone. This one's pretty good. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. There's phone, you get some, books, or you can download free ones on the internet. Or you can kick it old school. Go with one of these bad boys that crank up. I'm on this pretty often, actually. But as far as whether it's good or bad, I really don't think there's a yes or no answer. But I'll show you a couple, a little way to try. If you do use a metronome, that might, jumpstart you a little bit. And if you don't use a metronome, maybe this will make it a little more tolerable because it won't take as long. So the first thing we want to do is to find your top speed. Now, how we're going to do that is you're just going to pick a tempo that you think you can play at, but you have to play clean and consistently, and bump it up just a little bit at a time. Or if you feel, obviously it's easy, bump it up until you're, the notes are ringing out and you kind of cramp up, and back it up a little bit until you can do it comfortably and clean. That'll be your top speed. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut that in half. And we're going to use that as our starting tempo. And the most important thing that I found with a metronome is that not necessarily using it as like a drum machine or anything, but just using it as a way to keep track of your progress, to put a number on how you're doing. So for example, if your top speed is 200, just for the sake of round numbers, cut it in half for 100 beats per minute. That's your starting speed. Put the date, the starting speed, and your top speed. And that'll be your day's progress for now. Now, we're going to start, and maybe, and a lot of this stuff can change. This is just for an example. I usually go up between 10 and 20 beats per minute at a time, but sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on what I'm doing. And the way I'm going to show you can really help if you're in a time crunch. Maybe if they give you a song and you have like a week or two to learn it, and you can't quite get it up to speed, or you can't play it, clean enough. This might help you bump it up a little faster, so you can, really focus on learning the rest of it. So you find your top speed, cut it in half, pick an interval that you want to go up in steps. I'll just use like 15. And I'm going to go up, kind of a step system, kind of go up 3 intervals, back 1. Up 3, back 1. So you make a lot of progress, and then you back up just to make sure that everything's clean. Or if you feel like You know, if you went up 2 steps and you feel like you're struggling a little bit, back up 1. It's no big deal. Back up 1, do it again, bump it back up, and it'll feel a little smoother. So I'll just show you a quick example. I'm going to try not to take forever on it. Okay, that's 100 beats per minute. I won't do anything special, just, you know, because I came to ramble. So, 100 beats per minute. Okay, there's 100. Bump it up 15-ish. Yeah, that's good. Okay, there's 1 step. Then I'll go to 130. Metronome beginning. Okay, I'll show you a little bit just as an example. I'll try to keep it quick so I don't roam, so this video isn't 2 hours long. Okay, there we're going to start with 100 beats per minute. And I'll just do, you know, 16th notes straight through, no big deal. Okay, go to 100-ish, and then I'll bump it up a little bit to 115. Okay, 130. Ish. Yeah, I don't know. This doesn't really have lines on it. Then one more, I'll go to 145. Then I'll back off and go back to 130. Then I'll go back up to 145. And 145 to 160. Then 1 to 175. Okay, I felt a little crampy, so I'll back up to 160 again. Back to 175. There, that was smoother. Now we'll go to 190. You know, and just keep going up like that, and then, you know, just, you know, take whatever you ended on for that practice for that day, write it down, what your new top speed was, and then cut that in half for tomorrow, and keep track of it, and you'll see it bump up, you know, pretty good, depending on how much time and put you in and everything like that, but make sure you keep track of it more than anything. Okay, the next thing that seems to be one of the bigger factors for me is the string gauge. Not necessarily what, you know, if it's 9s or 11s, but to make sure you're comfortable with the tension for the scale length and the tuning you're using. I'm using a 26.5-inch scale length 7-string. I like the 10 to 59. I think it makes it like a 10 to 46 for a 6-string. But, or 49 or something like that. I've tried some with, you know, like the light 9s on a shorter scale length, like 25.5. And it seems like the strings move, they wave a little more. And when my pick gets back to the string's not there. and I have to wait for the wave to come back. So it kind of messes me up a little bit. That's just me personally, though. But a lot of people like the light strings because it is easier to fret. It's easier, you don't have to push down as hard. And there's not as much pick to string contact because there's, it's smaller. It's physically smaller. So that's another factor. That's not huge, but it still can be a difference depending on your specific, technique or what you're used to. But I also don't like super heavy strings because they are really hard to push down and there's a lot of string contact. But the part I like, this is, about mid-range. This would be like, I don't know, like using 10s in standard on a, regular scale compared to using 9s in standard. But that the string does move a little less. If your wave is going like this on a 9 gauge, it's going to be going just a little bit smaller on a 10. And that seems to feel about right. The string is still moving, but it's, my hand syncs up with the way the string's wobbling. But, just kind of mess around with the string gauge and maybe you'll find something that, works or something that doesn't. Just make sure you remember what it is and, it might help you out a little bit too. Okay, the next thing is your hands. Making sure they're efficient and they're not moving all over the place and using extra motion, extra energy. So I'll kind of break it down into your pick hand, fret hand, right, left, whichever you're doing. I'll start with the fret hand first. The thumb placement on the back of the neck is one of the biggest things I see. A lot of times it's way up here, or sometimes, it's not even touching sometimes, depending on, I've taught some people and I've seen all kinds of different, styles, which could work. It's not a big deal, but I'm just, mess around with where your thumb is on the back of the neck. If I'm really cranking, it might be, almost not even halfway up on the neck. It's not in a thick part. So just play around with where your thumb is, and depending on if you're playing up here compared to down here, it might change. Just be aware of it and try moving your hand around a little bit. Another thing is your fingers. Make sure, because I had a tendency for a good while to kind of, they're like all over the place and making big, huge steps to try to slam down on the next one. That's not really going to help. You really want to move them as little as possible so they don't have as far to go to the next one so it can make it there a little faster. Try to even go, keep all your fingers on, almost touching. So this is still ringing out. And try to keep, that was pretty awful, but try to keep it as close to the string as you can and only move that finger so you can, kind of make a little smaller movements. Those are some of the things you can try with your left hand. The right hand, there's a couple things. It's how your hand moves, whether you use elbow motion, wrist, or finger. I've seen all of them. I'm sure from a medical point, as far as like how your tendons and muscles work, there is one that's probably a lot better for you than others. But I've really seen all of them work out real well. So again, kind of experiment. I think a combination of all of them is, kind of the goal, but, it really depends on the part and what you're doing and what's comfortable for you. I'd say comfort is the most important thing out of any of this. But, you can try different things to see what might feel a little better or not. But if you have the ability to, try to record yourself and just go as fast as you can go. And watch both hands. Make sure this one isn't flopping all over. And make sure this one isn't, making big, like, strummy things. Just kind of, but try to focus in on whether it's your elbow moving or your wrist or your fingers. Just to kind of know, and then maybe try consciously trying wrist motion for a little while. See if that helps. Or try doing elbow and see if that helps. The next thing is how you hold your hand. Whether you hold it kind of in and tight, Paul Gilbert like this, or whether it's kind of out and all over the place. That can all kind of depend on the part too. If you have a part that needs a little bit more muting for the other strings, you might have to have it open a little bit, and that's okay. But if you have the chance to, I would suggest trying to keep it at least a little bit hooked if you can, because that's less weight that you have to flip around. So you can make a little smaller movements and not have to put as much muscle into moving your hand, because those other ones aren't flopping around at the end. You know, again, try it out, see what happens. Okay, here's something that might be a pretty big deal too, is what kind of picks you use. There's some that are different shapes and sizes and materials and thicknesses and just about everything. These are some pretty common ones, but there's also some made out of like whalebone and horn and wood and different kinds of rocks and, you know, all kinds of stuff that I'm sure are great, but I just haven't tried them. So I couldn't say anything, but just from what I've used here recently, I'm using this one now because I'm really in love with this super sharp tip on it. I was using these two. The Jazz 3 black, pretty standard, and the Altex Jazz 3, because the Altex was a little harder, way harder, but it's a little smoother on the edges than the Jazz 3, and this lasts forever. But I started seeing a couple people use this with a sharper point, and it kind of forced me to pull my finger back, pull the pick away from the string and just hit it with the very tip. So there's less pick to string contact, which makes makes you play, you're picking a little faster. But, you know, same thing. Here's Altex and Altex, the Jazz 3 and the regular sharp. So same material, different size. Same size, different thickness. These ones are a different material and the same size. You know, different tips in the same size. But, experiment with a little bit of all of them. This one's a little different too. It's really thick, and it has a little finger hole thing. And the tip's a little rounder, but I mean, any experimenting like that's, you know, good to try out. You'll find what you like and don't like pretty quick. This one might be the Dava picks. This is the Jazz 3 size, but they make a standard size like that too. Is that this has two different materials on it. The black back here is really soft, more like a standard pick. Really floppy. Okay. The green is more comparable to like the red Jazz 3. Not as stiff, but you can get different thicknesses and sizes and such still. But it's a lot harder than this. So depending on how you choke up on your pick, if you hold it way back here like this, it's going to be a little floppier like that one. And if you choke up on it and hold it real tight and use a small tip, it'll act more like this one. So, you know, it gets by a random pack of picks and different shapes, sizes, materials, thicknesses. Try them all out. See what you like, what you don't like. You know, give them a try. Try them for at least a couple days or, you know, a week or so and see if you like them. Go back to what you were using. See if you still feel the same way about it. You know, just experiment with them a little bit. This is a pretty, you know, small thing you can try, but it can make a big difference. Okay, so those, you know, hopefully helped out a little bit. Give them all a try. Try different combinations of pick strings. Change your hands with each of the combinations. Try out all with a metronome. Try it without. You know, some combination might click with you, but if it's uncomfortable at first, unless it's painfully uncomfortable, then stop right away. But if it's a little awkward, don't give up immediately. Try it out. Because I've done that, especially with picks and strings. You know, it didn't feel right, but that's just because you're not used to it. Give it a chance, give it a couple days, a week, and go back to what you were using and see which one you like best now. So, you know, give them all a try. You might find something you like that you didn't realize or that you didn't really think you would, and it might really help you out. So, I hope you can get something from this, and good luck. Let me know if you think of any other lessons, theories, topics, ideas you might want to see me cover. and I'll see what I can do for you. Thanks for watching.